There was a lot of discussion surrounding Stellar Blade before release, mostly circling between the protagonist Eve being conventionally attractive and how similar that the game looked to Nier Automata. Stellar Blade is a great game that does a lot right, that falters in key areas due to an unwillingness to leave its inspirations at the door and a fundamental lack of any semblance of storytelling ability, resulting in a mismatch of ideas that bounce off one another without an engaging story to distract yourself with. Let's begin with the combat. The combat is a mismatch of Dark Souls DNA and Devil May Cry combos, which when it works, works well, but when it doesn't, it really doesn't. One of the hallmarks of Dark Souls is its challenging combat that demands precision, timing and strategic thinking. Stellar Blade adopts this approach, encouraging players to learn enemy patterns and master dodging and counter-attacking. It also uses the bonfire structure, where save points are scattered around levels and they serve as areas to replenish your healing items and purchase upgrades. In the earlier sections especially, the Dark Souls influence is very clear to see, but it comes without the challenge that comes with it. The game is not very hard. It can be punishing, they're different things. You take a lot of damage if hit, but enemy attacks are well telegraphed for parries, unblockable attacks flash with colours relating to your corresponding counter. You have limited healing items at any one time. If you do die, you're sent back to the supply camp. The game punishes you for failure, but it isn't hard per se. The boss battles, for example. I'm hardly a god at these type of games, but only the last 3 bosses in the game, which are all at the end in a row, killed me at all, like once. I beat the rest on a first attempt. They are insanely fun bosses and a great spectacle with brilliant presentation, but they're not hard. Boss fights in Stellar Blade typically have a learning curve that allows players to understand attack patterns and behaviours over time. While initial encounters might seem tough, beginning the fight patiently to recognise patterns reveals the weaknesses and strategies that make the fights more than manageable. Just like regular enemies, many bosses have easily telegraphed attacks, giving players visual or audio cues to react. This design choice helps players anticipate and respond to attacks, reducing frustration and encouraging skill development. Bosses can often be approached with multiple strategies, catering to different playstyles, whether you prefer a more defensive approach or aggressive tactics. The game does provide options, I suppose, that can make them feel less daunting. I personally played with an incredibly aggressive playstyle, utilising parries more than dodges to keep the pressure on bosses, which faster builds up your ability to use beta skills and just shred them. They do get harder as you go on though. Early bosses serve more as tutorials to teach you core mechanics, while later bosses build on these skills, ensuring that you're adequately prepared for the tougher challenges. The bosses generally strike a balance by offering challenging boss fights that require skill and strategy, but without being excessively difficult. Whether that's a good thing or not is entirely up to you. This approach ensures that you feel a sense of accomplishment without the undue frustration. I personally like this, and it makes the game feel more accessible and enjoyable for a broader audience than the niche-ish audience of the Dark Souls games. So there's the general ethos of Dark Souls scattered in this game without the challenge, but the combat also takes direct inspiration from hack and slash greats such as DMC. It incorporates intricate combo systems, allowing players to chain together a series of attacks. This encourages you to experiment with different move combinations to maximise damage and style, and it is very fun to do so, by the way. Unlocking extra combos and testing them out is a load of fun. I found this combat more enjoyable when it leaned towards this route than the Dark Souls route. Devil May Cry has always been renowned for its emphasis on style, and if there was one word you could use to describe Stellar Blade, it is stylish. The combat looks cool at all times. When pulling off complex maneuvers, it looks and feels cool. It encourages you to perform flashy and elegant attacks, rewarding creativity and precision as a form of self-actualization. The combat is fast-paced and fluid, allowing for quick dashes, dodges and rapid attacks. This mirrors the agility and speed of combat seen in games like Devil May Cry. Now, I'm not saying that Devil May Cry has a patent on games being fast, but if you've spent enough time with a Devil May Cry game, you will notice the similarities. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, by the way. DMC pioneered a whole genre, so on a smaller scale, this is completely fine. The issue arises when so many other components of the game feel like something else. The structure feels like Dark Souls, the combat feels like Devil May Cry, and the atmosphere and story feel a lot like Nier Automata. Speaking of, let's move on to the world. The world of Stellar Blade is, in my opinion, a wasted opportunity visually. The graphical fidelity of this game is fantastic, and when it wants to, it looks gorgeous. There are areas in this game, particularly more towards the end, that just look fantastic, but most of the linear areas of the game are in underground abysses or abandoned subway stations, and that's such a waste. We could have been in colourful environments. I get that we're in a post-apocalypse here, but that doesn't mean that everything needs to be dark and dreary. And then we have the open world sections. There are 2 open world areas in this game, and they look exactly the same. The first is the wasteland that's on screen right now. Look at this, pay attention, really take it all in. It looks cool for sure, it's expansive, it's orange, all very good. Now, here is the second open world area on screen, the desert. Really take it all in, it looks cool for sure, it's expansive, it's orange, all very good. They both look nice, but I cannot fathom why they would make both locations look so similar. So it's a damn good thing that they're actually designed brilliantly. This is a game that heavily rewards exploration. If you go off the beaten path, there's almost always something there, whether it's just some money and materials or important upgrades and outfits. If you just pick a direction and go that way, you will find something, and that was really satisfying. There's plenty of side missions in these areas that were rarely just go here and kill 10 enemies. There were only 2 or 3 of those. There were usually very threadbare stories attached, and it was usually going to a location to retrieve an item or find a dead body. Almost all of the missions end in a bad way, and this drastically supports the world building. This is a post-apocalyptic world where everything is just beyond shit for everybody, and they did a great job of really making it feel that way. You can really feel the breath of Nier Automata breathing down your neck when traversing these areas though. Now again, Nier Automata doesn't have a pattern on empty, depressing worlds with this type of soundtrack, but when compared with the story, oh boy. Hi everyone, this is me. Look how cool I am. Just wanted to take a 15-second break from the video to say that if you're enjoying the video, then please consider taking a look at some of the other videos on the channel. If any look interesting to you, check them out. You'll be doing yourself a favour if you really think about it, and then subscribe while you're there. I would love to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I'd really appreciate it if you stuck around as long as you enjoy the content. I even have a playlist on the channel for what I think are some of my best videos, so they're easy viewing. Thanks guys, back to the video. To put this in the nicest way possible, this story leads me to believe that the conversation in the boardroom must have been something like, what if we wrote a story like Nier Automata? People loved that, but with a twist. The twist is, we'll make every single component of the story drastically worse. And then everyone clapped. In all seriousness, nothing here works, and it mostly stems from how bland everything feels on a core level. Eve has 0 personality, and it clashes with the direction that the story goes. Eve is an android, and as she learns more about her purpose and her mission, and why she's here in the first place, it just washes over her as if nothing grand has happened at all. This happens similarly in Nier Automata, but 2B is deeply affected by her purpose, and the idea of sentience in androids is a key theme, and the whole thing sticks out to me 7 years, Jesus Christ, 7 years later. This is a running theme in Stellar Blade. There are some side quests with multiple stages where Eve helps people and becomes friends with them in perilous situations, but she never shows an ounce of emotion to anything in her voice. She says the right things, her entire personality is just, I'll help you because I'm nice. And it just never changes. She says the things that show that she would care, but she never sounds like she does, and it's really jarring for a game with a concept and a world like this to have such bland characterization of the protagonist. And Adam is the worst. Oh my god, this dude. He plays the 9S role in this game essentially, but if we could go back to the boardroom for a moment, the conversation here must have been, so, we've decided to give Eve 0 personality, but that's fine. She'll play the straight man role. We should give her companion a bunch of personality so they can bounce off each other and create chemistry to make the key plot points more impactful, right? And then someone else just went, nah, let's make him even more boring, it'll be funny. And it doesn't help that his voice acting is so wooden and lifeless. It is among the worst voice acting I have seen in a game of this scale. It is genuinely shocking. And the voice acting across the game in general is just really poor. Every NPC just sounds like they're reading from the page and not giving any life into it. It's dull. The only character whose voice actor it seems tried at all is Lily. She feels somewhat out of place because there's actually an ounce of emotion in her voice.
Oh, this place. This is where the memories are kept, right?
The story of Stellar Blade is sadly just there. It has the bones of Nier Automata's excellence with none of the depth and complexity. And that's a real shame because I feel like it could have. I know this video seems pretty negative, but there's a lot to like about Stellar Blade. The combat is really fun unless you're fighting more than 2 enemies at once. They'll attack you milliseconds apart, so you have no way of parrying both attacks. But other than that, the combat is genuinely really fun. The world rewards exploration and at times is beautiful. But what prevents Stellar Blade from reaching greatness is its refusal to break free from its inspirations and a seemingly intentionally bland story that chooses to suck any semblance of life out of its characters at every turn. And that is how Stellar Blade holds itself back. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope that you did enjoy it. If you did, then please leave a like, as that would help me out, and if you did enjoy it, that would lead me to believe that you would like to see more videos like this, in which case you should subscribe, because I upload every single week. But for now, that is all from me. Have a nice day, and goodbye.